There is tremendous pain present. No further definition needed. Doesn't matter, collective, individual, it's pain. It is ego's pain, which is not to disregard it, but it creates a gap, creates a space by depersonalizing the pain. It's no longer so serious. It's no longer felt as a threat. And so it becomes easier to accept it, easier to honor it, easier to allow it as what is. It's not a personal pain, even as it is present within the person. It's just pain. It's just energy. It is no less personal than electricity flowing through a building or rain falling from the sky. It is the pain of ego, and it is very much present, and it is very much my desire and intention and practice to honor and accept it as a part of what is right now. And it's felt in the body. Right here with a branching upwards, but primarily in the solar plexus region, right underneath the heart. It's a squeezing, it's a gut punch feeling. It's a feeling of what now? There's nothing I can do. There is nothing I can do to change this. That's painful for ego. And again, there's no judgment in discerning that this is the pain of ego. There's no diminishing or disdain in it. There's no, oh, ego and your silly games. No. It's the pain of the mind-made self. The awareness that it is the mind-made self and not the actual self is just awareness. It's not a judgment. The mind-made self is not bad or wrong to be. It exists. It is a part of existence. It is, in fact, self manifested in form. Just because there's awareness that the essential self is that which is unmanifested doesn't mean we disregard or disdain or diminish the form version of that self. That is still expression of self. It is still sacred. It is still right and allowed to be exactly as it is. And as self, as embodying the true authentic being, the witness, the observer, the only role is to witness that. To witness that this is, that ego is, and ego is feeling pain. To honor that. Not to resist it, not to attach to it, to honor it as a part of what is. This is all a practice for myself personally. I'm not a master of anything. I am not a guru. I don't know anything. This is all personal experience and the sharing of that experience because I have a desire to. Because I believe in the power of self-expression. Because this is all the practice for me. A practice in vulnerability, in communication, articulation, in connection. Because ultimately this is a wholly selfish practice, but there is a desire, a powerful desire, alongside the desire for scientific documentation of this experience, to reach somebody. It doesn't matter if anyone sees these videos. It really, truly doesn't. But there is a desire to reach even one single soul. And for that soul to know that they're not alone. That if they're experiencing anything like this, that if they feel insane, that you're not alone in that. If even one person feels less crazy, less afraid, less alone in their experience of awakening, because it is happening. I know it is happening for countless others. Then the mission is accomplished. That's it. That's more than enough. But even if that didn't happen, there's still the expression of self, and it is the expression for the sake of itself. That's all any of this is. But ego is feeling tremendous pain. There is tremendous change happening. And it is painful change. It's not just the kind of change that, oh, they've rearranged the grocery store, or they no longer sell the brand of milk that I typically buy, and so now I am forced into surrender to this new flavor of almond milk, or whatever it be. No, this is significant. This is life-altering change. This is the type of change that is death. Some of it physical death. Much of it psychological death, emotional death, death of past versions of self, death of ways of being, death of the narrative that we had carried forth with us, death of identities. And it will continue because it's forcing people into surrender. That's what it is. That is where we are in the cycle of ascension. We have asked for this. As one who came with very specific intentions into this life experience, I asked for tremendous suffering. I asked for it so that it would break me, so that it would force me, myself, my experience of consciousness, into surrender, because that was my desire. And so it has been. So it has been that in this life experience, there has been tremendous pain. There has been tremendous suffering. So much that it became intolerable. So much that for most of this life experience, I didn't want to be here. For most of this life experience, there was a desire to kill myself, because it was found to be intolerable simply to exist in this realm. Ultimately, I came to the point of splintering, the point of breaking. It was somewhat gradual. It could have been more complete. That's not the way it worked. But over the past, 5-6 years now, it's been a gradual process of releasing and coming to the final moment of realization, which will never quite be the final moment, but it has been a more total break from this point on, realizing I will never be happy, understanding how that is ego's concept, happiness, and that the concept of happiness contains within it forever unhappiness. It's never truly happy. This thing that I had thought of as happy is not real and is not attainable and in fact is suffering. And so it is the negation of itself, even. Speaking to ego, honoring, accepting, I will never be happy. And so I'm going to stop trying. I give up. I give up on happy. I give up on success. I give up on enlightenment. I give up on anything. On trying to be anything. I can't be anything. Because I can only be that which I am. And that which I am is unmanifested, is no thing, is in fact simply being. That is all I am, and that is all I ever shall be, is being. So I give up. And coming to peace with this has created a significant break. It has altered consciousness, it has altered experience of this reality tremendously. And now we are simply floating. We simply are here. But there is still feeling. Oh, there is absolutely feeling. There's absolutely emotion. Emotion is present. There is no running from it. That's the point, is to stop running from emotion. There's no more identification with it so much either. It's just there, and so it doesn't really matter what's there. But it's very much there. And right now, there is pain. There is pain. Significant pain. Tremendous pain. The kind of pain that would have one screaming. Pain that has been experienced in a personal way. Pain that is currently within the collective and felt in this vessel. Because more and more are being pushed into this break. There's a desire to read a passage that I just read in The Power of Now, which again I recommend to any and all. This section is called When Disaster Strikes. It is applicable to the now moment for many. What is happening with those towers is considered by ego to be disaster, is considered by the mind to be disastrous, things going terribly wrong. That is with great intention. Everything is going exactly right. And the intention with these wrong things occurring is to drive the self into a state of surrender. As far as the still unconscious majority of the population is concerned, only a critical limit situation has the potential to crack the hard shell of ego and force them into surrender, and so into the awakened state. This is happening. This will continue to happen. A limit situation arises when through some disaster, drastic upheaval, deep loss, or suffering, your whole world is shattered and doesn't make sense anymore. It is an encounter with death, be it physical or psychological. The egoic mind, the creator of this world, collapses. Out of the ashes of the old world, a new world can then come into being. There is no guarantee, of course, that even a limit situation will do it, but the potential is always there. Some people's resistance to what is even intensifies in such a situation, and so it becomes a descent into hell. In others, there may only be partial surrender, but even that will give them a certain depth and serenity that were not there before. Parts of the ego shell break off, and this allows small amounts of the radiance and peace that lie beyond the mind to shine through. In the past, for myself, there had been partial surrenders to the experience. The surrender is more total now. But again, these situations will continue if you look out into the world. And I do not follow the news. There is no need for it whatsoever. But it is very likely that there will be an increase, an uptick in the amount of disaster situations. We are in the period of drastic upheaval that is collective, because it is pushing the collective into surrender to what is. Something just to be aware of and to use always for personal enlightenment. You can always accept what is at some level, which is another portion of this that I'm going to get into. Even if you can't accept what is, you can accept your resistance to what is. You can accept that ego is resisting it, that ego is having a response. You can accept that. You can surrender to that. Limit situations have produced many miracles. There have been murderers in death row waiting for execution who in the last few hours of their lives experienced the egoless state and the deep joy and peace that come with it. The inner resistance to the situation they found themselves in became so intense as to produce unbearable suffering, and there was nowhere to run and nothing to do to escape it, not even a mind-projected future. So they were forced into complete acceptance of the unacceptable. They were forced into surrender. In this way, they were able to enter the state of grace, with which comes redemption, complete release from the past, which is what redemption is. You redeem your past when you release it entirely, your future as well, and you inhabit fully the present moment, which is the only time and place that ever actually exists. Of course, it is not really the limit situation that makes room for the miracle of grace and redemption, but the act of surrender. So whenever any kind of disaster strikes, or something goes seriously wrong, illness, disability, loss of home or fortune, or of a socially defined identity, breakup of a close relationship, death or suffering of a loved one, or your own impending death, know that there is another side to it, that you are just one step away from something incredible, a complete alchemical transmutation of the base metal of pain and suffering into gold. That one step is called surrender. I do not mean to say that you will become happy in such a situation. This is important. You will not. But fear and pain will become transmuted into an inner peace and serenity that come from a very deep place, from the unmanifested itself. It is the peace of God which passes all understanding. Compared to that, happiness is quite a shallow thing. With this radiant peace comes the realization, not on the level of mind, but within the depth of your being, that you are indestructible, immortal. This is not a belief. It is absolute certainty that needs no external evidence or proof from some secondary source. Trying to decide if I want to read more. It's so important, though, to understand that, to accept that, actually, because acceptance is beyond understanding. With acceptance comes this deeper level of comprehension, the comprehension that's beyond the mind. Acceptance that happiness is fleeting. Happiness, in fact, is not happy. Happiness contains with it always the seed of unhappiness. It is a part of the suffering. When you can surrender the happiness, when you can accept not happy, you are freed from it in a way that transforms all of it into something totally other, Nothing has changed, and yet you are changed. And because you are changed, everything around you is changed without changing. It is this deep and indescribable peace. It's not happy, but it is peace. And many times even joy. There is a joy, there is a deep dwelling of contentment with what is, even when what is not happy. In fact, that contentment arises from the total surrender to unhappy. The total surrender of all happiness. Never gonna have it, not a thing that exists. Give that up. No longer playing the game, seeking happiness. You feel totally free. You feel the liberation from effort, from struggle, from strain, the liberation from all comparison or competition. None of that exists anymore. It ceases to matter. It ceases to really be. It's all illusion. It's all insubstantial, irrelevant, immaterial. There is only this, the knowledge of absolute freedom and of the wellness of being eternally, infinitely. And certainly unconditionally. I do want to read about Eckhart Tolle's description of how you always have another opportunity to surrender. Even if your surrender to this moment is in this moment not yet possible. You can surrender to the rejection. You can surrender to the resistance. You can surrender to the internal condition. If you are struggling to accept and surrender to an external condition, you can accept and surrender to the internal one. Here it's written, your first chance is to surrender each moment to the reality of that moment, knowing that what is cannot be undone because it already is. You say yes to what is or accept what isn't. Then you do what you have to do, whatever the situation requires. If you abide in this state of acceptance, you create no more negativity, no more suffering, no more unhappiness. You then live in a state of non-resistance, a state of grace and lightness, free of struggle. Whenever you are unable to do that, whenever you miss that chance, either because you are not generating enough conscious presence to prevent some habitual and unconscious resistance pattern from arising, or because the condition is so extreme as to be absolutely unacceptable to you, then you are creating some form of pain, some form of suffering. It may look as if the situation is creating the suffering, but ultimately this is not so. Your resistance is. It is always resistance that creates suffering, not the situation. Nothing and no thing makes one feel. It is the resistance or attachment to that thing that creates suffering. Or the release of resistance, the total acceptance, the non-attachment, which creates the opposite of suffering. Peace, joy. Now here is your second chance at surrender. If you cannot accept what is outside, then accept what is inside. If you cannot accept the external condition, accept the internal condition. This means do not resist the pain. Allow it to be there. Surrender to the grief, despair, fear, loneliness, or whatever form the suffering takes. Witness it without labeling it mentally. Embrace it. Then see how the miracle of surrender transmutes deep suffering into deep peace. This is your crucifixion. Let it become your resurrection and ascension. And then just a little bit more about surrendering to pain, because that is something that masculine energy is learning at this time. It starts with this. It starts with the surrender to pain. When you begin this process, there's still a strong identification with the mind-made self. It's just habitual. It's not bad. It's got a lot of momentum built up. That train, you've lived on that train for a long period of time. And it takes practice and consistency in stepping off of that train, finding yourself back on it, stepping off of it again, to begin to slow the momentum of it, to loosen its grip upon you. Initially, it is beneficial to understand, even if you're not off that train, you can surrender to being on the train. You can surrender to the experience. There is always a level of surrender that can be achieved. And that's all it takes. That is all it takes to start infusing everything with consciousness, to become more awake, to become more aware, to loosen the stranglehold of mind over self. Forget about surrender for a moment. When your pain is deep, all talk of surrender will probably seem futile and meaningless anyway. When your pain is deep, you will likely have a strong urge to escape from it rather than to surrender to it. This is what masculine energy does. You don't want to feel what you feel. What could be more normal? But there is no escape, no way out. There are many pseudo-escapes: work, drink, drugs, anger, projection, suppression, and so on. But they don't free you from the pain. Suffering does not diminish in intensity when you make it unconscious. When you deny emotional pain, everything you do or think, as well as your relationships, become contaminated with it. You broadcast it, so to speak, as the energy you emanate, and others will pick it up subliminally. If they are unconscious, they may even feel compelled to attack or hurt you in some way, or you may hurt them in an unconscious projection of your pain. You attract and manifest whatever corresponds to your inner state. This is how we create. This is why it is so important to allow emotions to express, to acknowledge what is arising within you. Whatever you are repressing, you're keeping there and you're drawing more of it in. Let it flow. Let it flow freely so that we can attract what is actually meant for us, what we actually intend to attract, so that life can live through us. When there is no way out, there is still always a way through. There is no way out of pain. There is no way out of the emotion. The way out is in. It always and only ever is. Acceptance of it. Acceptance of what is. If it's not acceptance of the external situation and the condition, then it's acceptance of the non-acceptance, which has generated an emotion. It is the resistance of ego and that thought which creates this painful emotion. Now we accept the emotion. There's always something to accept. You didn't do it wrong. There's no problem. Nothing bad happened here. Find the place, find the entry point that you can to accept and surrender. And enter there. It doesn't matter where. It doesn't matter where the entry is. Enter. Enter acceptance. When there's no way out, there's always a way through. So don't turn away from the pain. Face it. Feel it fully. Feel it. Don't think about it. You can't think a feeling. Feel it. Express it if necessary, but don't create a script in your mind around it. Give all your attention to the feeling, not to the person, event, or situation that seems to have caused it. Don't let the mind use the pain to create a victim identity for yourself out of it. Feeling sorry for yourself and telling others your story will keep you stuck in suffering. Notice that this is the habit of the unhappy self, the unhappy identity, that because it has built an identity on pain and suffering, wants to perpetuate that because it wants to stay alive. It wants to maintain that identity. When you start to release the pain and suffering, it feels threatened, and ironically creates more pain and suffering. It is a practice to accept that, to accept the presence of that, to cease identification with that, and let it suffer. Let it feel diminished. It's not your suffering, it's not your pain, and you can accept that it's there. In your acceptance of it, it begins to dissolve, it begins to transmute. Since it is impossible to get away from the feeling, the only possibility of change is to move into it. Otherwise, nothing will shift. So give your complete attention to what you feel and refrain from mentally labeling it. As you go into the feeling, be intensely alert. At first, it may seem like a dark and terrifying place, and when the urge to turn away from it comes, observe it, but don't act on it. Keep putting your attention on the pain. Keep feeling the grief, the fear, the dread, the loneliness, whatever it is. Stay alert, stay present with your whole being, with every cell of your body. As you do so, you are bringing a light into this darkness. This is the flame of your consciousness. At this stage, you don't need to be concerned with surrender anymore. It's happened already. How? Full attention is full acceptance, is surrender. By giving full attention, you use the power of the now, which is the power of your presence. No hidden pocket of resistance can survive in it. Presence removes time. Without time, no suffering, no negativity can survive. The acceptance of suffering is a journey into death. Facing deep pain, allowing it to be, taking your attention into it, is to enter death consciously. When you have died this death, you realize that there is no death, and there is nothing to fear. Only the ego dies. Only illusion can ever be threatened. Only illusion can ever face destruction or diminishment. If there is the feeling of threat, if there is the feeling of loss, if there is the feeling of impending doom or death or dread, it is only impending for an illusion. Nothing real can be threatened. So hold this in awareness, that whenever there is this feeling of threat, it is only ever ego, it is only ever illusion that is under threat. You can safely allow that to occur. You can safely allow that threat to be carried out. You can safely allow that destruction, that demise. That is liberation, in fact. Imagine a ray of sunlight that has forgotten it is an inseparable part of the sun and deludes itself into believing it has to fight for survival and create and cling to an identity other than the sun. Would the death of this delusion not be incredibly liberating? And it is. Do you want an easy death? Would you rather die without pain, without agony, than die to the past every moment and let the light of your presence shine away the heavy, time-bound self you thought of as you? There is tremendous suffering taking place. It is only the suffering of ego. There is tremendous death taking place. It is only the death of ego. It is our role, if you are one watching this, if you have made it this far into this video, You are aware that you are here to hold the frequency of conscious awareness. You are here to shine light into the world for all. It's not anything fancy. It's not anything special. It's just what you're here to do because you chose, because this is the time. Because this is the time, and this is the role that has been selected by yourself. So hold this awareness for yourself and for all self. As suffering is witnessed, as pain and destruction and death is witnessed, be aware it is only ever the death of illusion. Hold that knowing in your conscious awareness. In so doing, you can become fully accepting of what is, even when what is death. You become aware there is no death. There is no destruction, not to anything real. It's not a denial of what is at the level of form. It's just the awareness that there is something greater taking place here, that ultimately all is really well and exactly as it should be, that everything is working perfectly in alignment with the divine plan, the highest order, the natural order, which is to the highest good of all. And again, this is not some moral imperative ethical dilemma, highest good, where some fall to the wayside while the majority benefit. No, that's not how this works. That is not how nature works. All means all. Highest good of everybody means the best for everybody. The most joy, the most benefit. All of that is taking place. It's a liberation happening. That liberation is happening through the destruction of delusion. The only thing that can be destroyed, the only thing that can face death is ego, is the false self and all that it has created. That's what's happening. Everything created by the false self is falling apart. Because it's time to be liberated from that illusion. It's time to know peace. It's time to know true joy and satisfaction. It's time to know the truth of our being. So, hold this awareness, and in holding this awareness, hold the light for yourself and all self. That whatever happens, whatever towers fall, whatever great disaster strikes, whatever dramatic and drastic upheaval there is, it is just upheaval of illusion. It is just the death of ego. Ego is the only thing which can die. And it is the death of ego that frees us, that brings us into the egoless state of true liberation, of the knowledge of self. True knowledge, direct knowledge, awareness, experienceable, felt realization of our immortality, of our absolute invulnerability, of the eternal wellness and goodness and rightness of all that is. This is the destiny of humanity. It's the destiny of consciousness, and it is playing out presently. Presently. And we are here to witness and to hold the knowing that all is really, truly, as all should be. To smile in the face of death, because we have already died that death. And having died it, become aware it is nothing to fear. It is no thing. It doesn't exist. It is only the death of illusion. Let that illusion fall. Let ego meet its demise. It too will know liberation. It will know redemption. Through the meeting of its own demise, it will discover the sublimed state of itself. So it is. This is a tremendous time that we are moving into. It will only continue from here. And as always, all is exactly as all should be. Thank you for your witness. If you are one who has witnessed, it is deeply, deeply appreciated. The honor and the gratitude that is felt in sharing this journey, the journey of consciousness, with you, consciousness, with you, self, is profound, deep, and ultimately inexpressible. But we will simply say, thank you. Thank you for being. So it is. Have a beautiful day.